My name is Carlos Hernandez, and today I'll be discussing and demonstrating solutions provided by Office 365 to enable your remote workforce. First, we'll discuss why is today's topic relevant and timely. We will then establish some key terms that will be mentioned throughout the webinar. I will then describe 3 solutions available from Office 365. Those solutions are OneDrive with SharePoint Online, Windows Virtual Desktop with Azure Files, and Windows Virtual Desktop with a virtual server. Introducing the 3 solutions, I'll demonstrate them in action. We'll then review a table comparing the 3 solutions and finish up with some time for questions. Why discuss today's topic? COVID-19 forced many organizations and their employees to start work from home, aka WFH. Pre-COVID, working from home was a trend that was growing, as you can see from this chart. A survey performed by Gallup found that 59% of US workers who have been WFH during COVID-19 prefer to continue to work remotely. On my phone newsfeed, I frequently see articles asking, why is WFH here to stay? I humbly submit that WFH is something that is here to stay. Due to this, as an organization, you'll need solutions that can allow your staff to effectively work from home. We've all become experts in using Zoom and perhaps even Microsoft Teams if you already have Office 365. Those are great communication and/or collaboration tools. Today's focus is, if I had to boil it down to simplest terms, is do I need my server still, or I'd like to explore moving my server to the cloud, or my server is old, do I need to replace it, or are there other alternatives I haven't explored? After discussing, you find that yes, I don't think I need my server anymore, or I need some solution so that my staff can easily access important resources. Then what options are available to me through Office 365? Even if you have a more complex environment with a few servers and are considering moving your infrastructure to the cloud, this webinar is also for you. Before we explore some of these solutions available to you, let's define a few terms that may pop up throughout the webinar. Microsoft, in its infinite quest to confuse all of us, has rebranded Office 365 to Microsoft 365. So these terms I may use interchangeably. Just know if you use Exchange Online, for example, you have a Microsoft 365 subscription. As I mentioned earlier, if your burning question is, do I still need my server or can it go to the cloud? First of all, the cloud just means it is someone else's server, be it Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, and etc. For today, we are focused on Microsoft's cloud known as Azure. So when you hear that term, it just means I'm talking about Microsoft's cloud infrastructure. Identity management for many organizations is your local server using Active Directory, known to you as your domain. Your domain manages your users' usernames and passwords, among other Windows things like group policies. As a Microsoft 365 subscriber, your identity management actually is Azure Active Directory, which many organizations actually sync to their domain in their office. A key to enabling your remote workforce is secure identity management. For instance, soon all Office 365 subscribers have to have multi-factor authentication enforced for users, so this better ensures the security of your users and their data. When I get to the Windows Virtual Desktop portion of the webinar, you'll hear the term scalable. Simply put, this means as your needs increase or decrease, we can modify your resources in Azure, aka Microsoft's cloud, to best fit your needs. Finally, client application. This just means you'll install a program on your device to gain access to a service or function. On Windows, for example, we install Office. On a mobile phone, you go to the App Store and install it. Both, though, are client applications installed to your device, aka the client. For example, when you install Microsoft Office on a device, one of the applications is Excel. Now that we've established some key terms you may hear today, let's move on to some solutions available to you through Office 365. The first solution I'll present today is OneDrive with SharePoint Online. OneDrive is a client application you can install on your device, and when you sign into it, you can sync or view files in your organizational OneDrive. Let's elaborate a little bit on organizational OneDrive. You may find it referred to as your personal, but I think this confuses users, as some users actively use OneDrive for a personal account. To clarify it for users, I explain that this is a 1 terabyte of OneDrive provided to you by your organizational account. The purpose of this is to allow users to save data across platforms and be able to access it easily. OneDrive allows them to also share their files with others if needed. More importantly, though, we can also use OneDrive client application to access shared resources, be it in Teams or SharePoint Online. For this presentation, I'll demonstrate it in SharePoint Online, but the same sync button I will demonstrate later is available within Teams and functions the same way. To help users understand this better, I often bring up Dropbox because most users are familiar with it. When you use Dropbox, you install an app and then sign into that app to access files stored in Dropbox. In this scenario, the app we install is OneDrive. We sign into it, and then we access the files that are stored in SharePoint. Now let's go over some key considerations for this solution. First, likely zero licensing costs are going to be required. Unless your users have a mailbox-only plan in Office 365, you already have SharePoint and OneDrive available to you. What is the best fit for this solution? If your needs are only to move files and users have the necessary apps on a Windows or Mac device, then this is an ideal solution for you. The one significant limitation, though, is if you would like to get rid of a server, you don't think you need a server anymore, but you require an application that needs a Windows server, then this isn't going to fit your needs. And to illustrate that today, I'll use QuickBooks. So if your users need QuickBooks multi-user functionality that is only supported on Windows devices, as it requires an application called QuickBooks Database Manager. That application you cannot use multi-user mode. Using that as an example, this solution couldn't support that functionality and it would require solutions to follow. Two of the three solutions I'll present today leverage Microsoft 365 service called Windows Virtual Desktop. Note, I may refer to Windows Virtual Desktop as WVD, as IT people love our acronyms. The key to Windows Virtual Desktop is that it not only allows users to remotely access data, but also delivers applications to those users. Let's quickly read the Microsoft definition and then dissect it a little bit. Windows Virtual Desktop is a comprehensive desktop and app virtualization service running in the cloud. It's the only virtual desktop infrastructure that delivers simplified management, multi-session Windows 10 optimizations for Microsoft 365 apps, for enterprise, and support for remote desktop services environments. As you can see, I underlined a portion of their definition. Let's go over comprehensive desktop and app virtualization. This just means through WVD, you can deliver full desktops or just apps to your end users. You may have experience already with this if you have used Citrix NApp with Citrix Receiver or perhaps Parallels Remote Application Server. This graphic here gives a broad overview of the whole WVD service. The Your Subscription, Your Control part is what your IT administrator will set up and implement. The Managed by Microsoft is the hosted elements they take care of. As you can see from the graphic, app delivery is complex and requires a few moving parts to achieve. So implementing your own servers to do this requires a bit of overhead and regular maintenance, such as yearly SSL certificates and typical Windows updates. What WVD allows you to do is let Microsoft carry that overhead and maintenance burden and allows your organization to focus on optimizing the service for your staff. In other words, focus on delivering the apps your users need and ensuring it performs to their needs. Let's discuss the end user experience. In the Your Subscriptions, Your Control, you'll see the full desktop and remote app in this graphic. With WVD, we can deliver a desktop experience. So they click on that icon and it loads up a virtual desktop for that user with the apps we have installed on that device. Additionally, you can also just choose the specific application you need to launch. For example, Outlook. Specific app approach is referred to as remote app. What is great about this solution is the demo environment I will present to you today I set up in just a few hours. The key takeaway is WVD boils down to either delivering a full desktop to your users or specific apps. Let's discuss how do we access this service. The licensing requirements are listed in this slide. If you're already subscribed to Office 365, implementing WVD may just require a quick licensing change and you'll be off and running. You'll see I italicized the Microsoft 365 Business Premium. This is a newer license plan that is an excellent blend of the 365 services, but also includes some security elements to it. If your current licensing isn't listed, that would be a great plan to explore for your organization. In today's webinar, we will leverage WVD with two different approaches, Azure Files and an actual virtual server. Let's first learn about Azure Files. Many users are familiar with a map drive. For instance, hey, I save the file to the N drive in the accounting folder. What Azure Files is very simply is that same functionality, but moving it to Azure, aka Microsoft's cloud. The significant benefit of this is you can have a server-like file sharing experience without the virtual server cost. When using hosted services, servers have two costs, storage and compute. Azure Files gives you that file share experience, but only needing to incur storage costs and not the compute costs. Now let's go over key considerations for this solution. If you need to deliver applications to your users, but those applications do not require a Windows Server, it's an excellent fit. For example, sometimes an app can be supported just on Windows 10. In keeping with my QuickBooks example earlier, a good description would be your organization uses QuickBooks, but multi-user isn't necessary, so no server is necessary. Instead, you could just install QuickBooks on the virtual machines running in WVD and provide access that way. WVD can be used on different platforms, a great solution for BYOD usage. And again, assuming you do not need a Windows server, you can use it as a replacement for LogMeIn or TeamViewer for users to access apps and data they need. As mentioned earlier, the primary limitation of this approach is some applications require a Windows server. And in that case, the next solution is a potential solution for you. The next solution is Windows Virtual Desktop with Virtual Server. As discussed with Azure Files approach, this one allows you to install necessary apps on Windows Server, and then we just publish those apps to the Windows Virtual Desktop. In the example provided earlier, in this case, we would install QuickBooks Database Manager so that we could support multi-user mode. If you're familiar with or already running Citrix XenApp or have an aging terminal server, then this could be a replacement for your aging infrastructure. The primary limitation of this approach is that it is the most expensive of the three, as it will require compute, so running the server cost, as well as the storage costs for the server. In the definitions portion of the webinar, I mentioned scalable. Since I brought up cost, scalability is important to mention. With WVD and or virtual server being scalable, it means we can optimize it for your needs. As well as Azure also provides automatic shutdown and other cost-saving mechanisms. It is a significant benefit because if your on-premises environment is underperforming, the cost to fix may be a whole new servers. And in the case of Azure approach, just a matter of resizing your server to meet your needs, and then you may scale it up or scale it down throughout the year. So let me just switch screens here really quickly. Now that I've introduced each solution I'll demonstrate today, let's dive into how each of these works for the end user. First, we'll go over OneDrive with SharePoint Online. Give me a moment to switch screens. So what you're looking at here is I'm logged into a Windows 10 laptop with a user called Webinar, and so I'm logged in to that desktop. So then for the demo purposes, I'm logged in as a user called Alex Wilber. So Alex got OneDrive connected here. If you look at settings, you'll see that I'm logged in as Alex Wilber into OneDrive on a Windows 10 computer. So like this would be like your user's home laptop or company issued laptop. So OneDrive comes as part of Windows 10, so you just need to open it and sign into it, which I've already done. Then we would go into SharePoint and go to the files we need access to and click a sync button. So I'm going to illustrate that right now. So this is the home page of SharePoint right here. So this is their, this demo tenant homepage. And I know within this site, there's a document library called Demo Docs. And in SharePoint, document libraries are like containers of files. And so if you were to use this solution, what you would do is set up multiple document libraries to fit your needs. And then so I went to Demo Docs. So now I can see this is a document library called Demo Docs. See all the files in here. Now, in order to set up the sync partnership, once I'm in here, I click this sync button, I'll get a pop-up. I say, go ahead and open. And we're just going to create a new folder. And then you're going to see it show up in my File Explorer. And if you're on a Mac, it's going to show up in Finder. So if I click the File Explorer, I see here Contoso. So that's your company name. And this is the one I just synced to. I was testing it earlier, so I'd see other ones. But when you're in OneDrive, it has 3 sync states. And what this one means is that it's in on-demand mode only. So in order to open Sales Memo, I would have to have an internet connection, and then when I open it, it will download the file. And as you upload files to it or add a file to it, you'll get a different sync icon. So we could say sync demo. So I added a file to that document library. So now I have this icon. And so that means it's synced to SharePoint, but it's also available on my device. And it's best to keep users in on-demand mode because you run into less sync issues doing that. As you see here over to the left, you can see that it's already synced to SharePoint. So then everyone who syncs to the same document library has the same data. They just get to it through their File Explorer over here on the left. So that really summarizes that. That's just how you use OneDrive and SharePoint. So again, if you're on a Mac, you're going to have to download OneDrive. You sign into it. As you see here, I'm already signed into it. Then you navigate to SharePoint and then navigate to the document library or files you want to sync to. Click Sync. It's going to pop up that little window. You set up a sync, and then what you're going to get, depending, on a Windows device, we get this little building and then your company name. So, if you're XYZ Corp, you'll see that, and then the way it names the folder is you have the SharePoint site name, so that's the landing in this case, and then the document library name, Demo Docs. So that is how that works. So if you were interested in this solution, what you would do is you would just migrate your files to SharePoint, set permissions that are necessary, and then just walk the users through connecting to this. Now let's explore Windows Virtual Desktop. So as I mentioned earlier, you have to install a client app. I downloaded it. So say I was starting from scratch, I would go to this page, or maybe I'd email my users or whatever, but here's where the different apps I could download. So I have Android client, Mac OS client, iOS client, and I downloaded that, and you'll see it on my desktop. So the user downloaded that. I've installed it, and it's this orange icon right here. So after you install it and download it and run it, you're going to get this screen. You click subscribe, and we're going to log in as our demo user, Alex. So then you sign into it with your Office 365 credentials. Hopefully I have no typos. So now what it's doing, it's seeing what resources I've assigned to Alex. And then it calls it my feed. And so these, like this, Excel, Chrome, Edge, those are remote apps I mentioned earlier. So these will just deliver the app. And then Virtual Desktop is the desktop experience. So let's first show the desktop experience. So I'm going to double click on that. It's going to connect to it. Put in my password again. And as I mentioned earlier, if you had multi-factor turned on, multi-factor would be enforced on this app. So it makes your data and your users more secure. So as you see now, it loads a virtual desktop, so like a computer. So now I'm using a Windows Virtual Desktop as part of Microsoft 365's WVD service. And then I mentioned two solutions in the slide part. I said Azure Files or a server. So if you see here, Demo Docs, so I'm using the same document library or same files for demonstration purposes. You'll see it says Demo Docs, Azure Files, NIMS Demo. So this is the files via Azure Files method. So I just create those, and notice an X, just like a file share. In this case, I called it S. But then I also created a server, and I call that Demo FS. A lot of times in IT, we have a file server, we call it FS. So Demo-FS, so that's the name of the server, and then I have the same files. There's a few extra here because of QuickBooks. But earlier I mentioned, like, if you wanted to use QuickBooks in multi-user mode, you're going to need the QuickBooks to have, or you're going to need a server to have the database manager service. So I want to show you how I did that. Just an illustration. So say you do need a server, you have Sage, you have QuickBooks, maybe you have a CRM that you use, like Fishbowl is the one the client uses, but anyways, it needs to be on a Windows server. So I'm going to just launch connection to the server. So now I'm logging directly onto the server I created. And I just wanted to show here, this is the demo docs that I'm sharing out to my users. And that was the other drive I had mapped to Demo FS. And then this is that service I talked about, the QuickBooks Database Server Manager. So this is necessary to open QuickBooks in multi-user mode. So this can go on Windows 10, but ideally you're going to want it on a file server with a shared file and everything stored there, because then it runs best. So then, as you can see, it's a regular old server. If I look at it, it's server 2019, I believe. So if I look at properties, server 2019 data center, I get 8 gigs of RAM, and it's just a file server. And I could install other programs on there and share those out if I needed to, like I mentioned earlier. So let's get off the server. So this is, again, the desktop experience. But let's go through the app experience. So I'm going to sign out of my desktop. So just like you would sign out of a computer, I'm going to sign out of my desktop. So it's going to close all my apps and things open in that session. And that session is just on a virtual machine I set up in Azure. So now I'm back to my desktop, and I want to just launch a specific app. So let's imagine there's a Word file I know that's on the shared drive, and I want to open that Word file. Now you'll notice here I have a little icon next to Word. Let's just drag the other Word icon next to there. So this one without the little circle and green marks, that's Word installed on my laptop directly. So I have Word on my device, but let's say it's a Chromebook or something where Office doesn't perform the same, or it's a Mac, and we want to deliver the Windows version of Office. So we set up Windows Virtual Desktop for our Mac users. Anyway, they'll have that same icon. It will be the icon for the application and then that little circle with the green slashes in it to show that it's a remote desktop app. And I want to kind of just show, I open it from Windows Virtual Desktop, and I'll show you a few things to show the Office 365 integration. But let's just cover the Windows Virtual Desktop and Azure Files approach. So again, using Windows Virtual Desktop, and I'm going to open from Azure Files, you can see I want to work on this file called blog post preview. But another method I discussed was putting the files on an actual file server. So I'm just going to do it from demo FS. So this is from the file server, again, blog post preview. But additionally, I didn't show this earlier, but I could go directly to the files through the Word application, just the integration with Office, SharePoint, Office 365, just the ecosystem. So you see here, there is demo docs blog post preview. And to show you this, I mentioned earlier that Windows Virtual Desktop, if you need to deliver the apps to them, but say the users have Office installed, so you have E3 licenses or whatever, and they just need access to files, you could see that even if I'm not synced to OneDrive, if I'm logged into Office, so you want to log into Office, if I'm logged into it, as you see here, I'm logged in as Alex Wilbur, I could get to files within the 365 ecosystem directly from the app. So I'm going to, again, it was on the landing. That was the SharePoint homepage. In the documentary demo docs, opened it there, blog post preview. I've opened it in my virtual app. Information rights management is ability to enforce like policies, like say this file can't be downloaded or items like that. So that's what you saw there. But let's just try to open it through the WVD one, see if it's IRM doesn't fail on me. Fantastic. Anyway, as you can see, I could access files from either environment. It's just you need Windows Virtual Desktop if you need users to get the apps to the users because they don't have it, or their device doesn't support it, like a Chromebook, or you need to deliver an app like QuickBooks that needs the database service that I talked about earlier. So while on that note, I will show you how we're using the database service. Make sure I have to double click. Give it a moment to load. Again, when it loads, we'll see the little icon to show that it's a remote desktop app. Practice patience. Oh, here it comes. Just took its sweet old time. Okay, so what I did through QuickBooks is I was able to download a sample company file, and I set it up in multi-user mode. It sometimes kicks back to single user. Let's see if it did that to me again. I set up Alex as a user, so we're going to log in as Alex, and you can just let me know I'm opening a sample file. You'll see here at the top it says multi-user Alex, so we're leveraging the multi-user mode that we installed on that file server. And again, at the bottom here, you see that I'm opening it through the remote desktop app. And there's QuickBooks. So say I was using a Mac, which it doesn't support QuickBooks, and I don't want to go to QuickBooks Online or something. I want to have more control over the instance. Then I would just have a virtual server, install the database service on it, have enough licenses for multi-user, and then we would deliver the app through Windows Virtual Desktop. And again, they could get there directly through the desktop experience, which I think a lot of people prefer because it just feels like working from a computer, or the individual apps. And let's just go and close that. And that concludes demonstrating Windows. Actually, you know what? I want to show one more thing really quickly. I earlier mentioned that you could actually do the same thing in Teams. So in here, we have monthly reports. And really what Teams is on the back end is SharePoint. So if I go to the files part of this monthly reports, and I go to open in SharePoint, the sync button should work. I'm going to try it here. It didn't want to work earlier, but we'll see if it works now. Yeah, it doesn't want to. But if you open in SharePoint, sign in with your account. We'll load up that same set of files, but in SharePoint. And then, as we did earlier, we just click the sync button. And so if this was a Teams I'm using frequently and I don't want to deal with the Word Online step in Teams, or I just want to access it directly from my Finder in a Mac or File Explorer on a PC, you'll again show up like the other one. So it shows up under the building, and that was the sales and monthly reports. So sales and marketing is the team, and monthly reports is the file, this channel. So if you look at this, sales and marketing was the team, and monthly reports is the channel. So you see, again, just one again. So sales and marketing, the team, monthly reports, the channel. And so same functionality. If I were to add files there, they would show up in the team for other users. And it's all achieved through the OneDrive app. So you just sign into the OneDrive app and make sure that function's turned on in your SharePoint, and you're able to sync to them. Now let me take a moment to get back to my slideshow here. So I created a slide that quickly summarizes each solution from the lowest cost to the highest on the left-hand side of the table. In the first column, I highlight how users access the files. OneDrive uses syncing, and the other two behave like a mapped drive users are likely very familiar with. In the system requirements column, you'll see WED is the most flexible of the platforms, as users can also use a modern web browser to access the apps. Then the final column is just a summary of the solution. Essentially, OneDrive to SharePoint is a great solution if you only need to move file access to the cloud and users have the necessary software on their devices to access it. The two other solutions can fill the gap if they don't have the necessary applications. So say, for example, they need to open a QuickBooks file and they're on a Mac. So you would use Windows Virtual Desktop. And then the difference between the two is you only need to share files and deliver apps. Azure Files lets you achieve that. But if you also need to deliver an app that requires a Windows server, you would just fire up a Windows server within the Azure environment.
Thanks for joining this webinar. We will be posting this webinar on our channel, our NIMS technology channel. So feel free to subscribe, share, and like this webinar. You could visit our website at the website address listed on the screen. You can contact us if you have any feedback about this webinar or any ideas for future webinars or sound bites. They're at soundbites@nimsassociates.com, or you feel free to give us a call at the number listed on the screen. We hope this was helpful for you. Thanks for joining.